Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name's Tim Condon. For those of you who aren't regular listeners, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Clutch, and we do a little video series here designed to help small business owners and agencies uh, educate them on how to grow and scale their business. And today I've got the great pleasure of sitting down with Carole Mahoney, founder of Unbound Growth, scientific sales firm that works with businesses all over the country. And what's the name of the book? I didn't
So
have
it's Buyer First, How to Grow
it.
Your Business with Collaborative Selling.
Awesome. Okay, good. We'll talk about that as well. And before we sort of dive into our topic, I would just love to, we were talking a little offline about your approach and how you but I'd love to just hear sort of your background and how you got here first.
Well, ironically, I grew up in a family of small business owners and entrepreneurs and had both good and bad role models in that. And so the idea of a 9 to 5 job in my family was a bit of a foreign concept. So when I went to college and got a 9 to 5 job, everyone was waiting for the day where I was going to start my own business. And that started in 2007 at the height of the Great Recession. When I got laid off from my corporate job, I was a marketing coordinator and liaison between sales and marketing for a finance company. And I had always planned on starting my own business. I had this 5 year plan in mind, and my 5 year plan became a 6 month plan because that's how long I had unemployment to figure it all out. It was in the early days of SEO and pay-per-click. Like, people were still trying to figure out how to spell SEO, but I actually knew how to do it. And so I contracted with a lot of traditional agencies that were trying to, incorporate that in. And I thought I had it all figured out as a small business owner, as a marketing agency owner. And as things started to progress, I was either cut out of proposals or, it was cut down. And I realized I was going to have to actually sell something. Like, it wasn't just going to happen. I hated the idea of sales, though. Like, the pushy, aggressive, manipulative used car salesman was exactly what I thought of, and I wanted nothing to do with it. And so I avoided it. And then, reached a point in my business where I couldn't even pay for my groceries for my kids before Christmas, and figured, all right, now it's time to start learning how to sell, maybe. And what was interesting about it is that I hired a sales coach, and they exposed me to some of the what sales is really all about. And that's when I sort of made the sort of transition to the dark side. I went into sales away from marketing because I experienced such a transformation in how I thought about sales, and therefore how I behaved in sales, and therefore the results that I got, that my mission was always to help small businesses to grow and create jobs. Like, they're 99% of our economy. But like all other small business owners, they always focused on marketing, and that marketing was going to help them to be able to get to where they needed to, because most small business owners also don't like to sell like I did.
Yeah.
And so my mission, I realized that if I'm going to help them to grow, I'm going to have to teach them how to sell to today's buyer. Because what I saw happening in my marketing agency is that I was delivering all of these leads for them, but they couldn't close them. And so then I would lose the client because they couldn't afford to pay me because they weren't getting sales.
Yeah.
So I'm going to help you to grow. I'm going to have to help you to figure out how to sell. And so that's how Unbound Growth was born, as I transformed the marketing agency into a sales training and consulting agency. And we really take a very data-driven, scientific, psychological, neuroscience kind of approach to sales to make it less scary and more predictable, and something that small business owners can grasp and understand and feel good about being in sales, and not, despite the fact that I hate this and it's icky, I'm going to do it anyway. It reflects in how we behave in sales. And so that's
Yeah.
the mission of Unbound Growth.
That's really cool. With obviously we work with a lot of marketing agencies and tech development agencies, and I hear it over and over again that they they got into the business because they liked doing what they wanted to do. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't get in the business to have to bring on a bunch of new clients or like frankly even run a business, right? Most of them just wanted to do the thing
Do
they
the
like
work.
doing.
Yeah.
And so so when you walk into an agency or similar type business, what are the common themes you see that need to be sort of addressed right away?
So the first thing that I hear is that they think that if we do great work, they're going to stay with us and they're going to refer us to other people. Which, of course, you need to do great work in order for that to happen. But the idea of asking referrals and introductions is not even something that's typically in the realm of what they think of. One of the other biggest mistakes that I see with marketing agents specifically is, the potter has no shoes. Like, the work that we do for our
All the
clients,
time.
we don't do it for ourselves. We
Yeah.
don't write content for ourselves. We don't try to attract clients for ourselves. And so, like, these are the two pitfalls that I see a lot of agency owners do. Or, they'll they'll try some of the tactics in sales, and it goes so horribly because of the way that they think about sales that they're like, all right, that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and that doesn't work. And they write it off very quickly rather than really kind of investing in themselves to understand why isn't it working for you and how should it work for you. But the biggest pitfall I see is that they don't do for themselves what they do for their clients. They don't treat their business as a client.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that all the time. As a matter of fact, I literally have clients saying, "Can you help me?" And I'm like, "This is what you do." Like, no, really, this is your. Okay, so I've seen this analogy you've made about building IKEA furniture
Yeah.
and the buyer and seller relationship. Now, I have to warn you, this rule probably still stands. I have a rule of no IKEA furniture in my house because I can't tell you. I would be a millionaire if all I did was take YouTube videos of me trying to put this stuff together.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I want to hear your take because your take, it sounds like maybe it was a little different.
Well, and what was interesting is as I was doing the research for the book to understand, like, how is it that buyers today make their decisions? What do they actually want from salespeople? And there's numerous studies and research that I came across, but the one that really kind of opened my eyes to what buyers want today is called the IKEA effect. It was a study that was done by Harvard. And what they did is they wanted to understand, like you said, why are people willing to almost to pay more for something that they have to go through and figure out how to put together for themselves versus something that was put together for them by an expert? Like, why are people willing to pay more for something that they have to put more work into? And what they realized is that when we collaborate on a solution for ourselves, we place more value on it. When we put effort into something, we place more value on it, right? Like it's I use the cookie analogy sometimes. Like you can go to the store and you can buy cookies or you can make cookies. And which ones are you going to value more? The homemade cookies that you put together for yourself or the ones that somebody brought over that they just, plunked down on the counter because they picked it up at the grocery store? It tastes better. It feels better. You have a good or better feeling about it because you place more value on that. And so if we can approach our sales conversations, not as I need to pitch you, I need to convince you, I need to persuade you, but I need to collaborate with you to understand where you're at and what you think success looks like, and then offer our expertise in that, but really co-creating solutions together that the buyers feel are unique and specific to them, that it's not just some cookie cutter generalized things, but it addresses their specific needs.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've heard, I don't know if you've heard that the Betty Crocker thing that at one point they came up with a formula and they found that if they dehydrated the egg and included it instead of requiring the person to actually crack an egg and put it in,
Yep.
people didn't want it. They needed to crack the egg, right?
They needed to feel that they've done something
Yes.
significant, and cracking it. I mean, I feel great when I crack eggs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So how does this translate for an agency owner, right? How do they like specifically take this sort of concept of the IKEA effect, or called we just made up the egg cracking effect, right?
Yeah.
How do we translate that to, like, how does an agency owner say, like, okay, how do I implement that in my like day to day of getting more clients?
The most simple way to think about it is to look at the questions that you're asking your buyers throughout your sales process. Ideally, you have a sales process, and ideally, you have questions written down that you need to ask, which is one of the things that I find most agency owners don't have. So that's step number one. Identify the steps in your process and what questions you ask throughout. And then the next step is to look at those questions and ask, are these questions that I'm asking so that I get the information that I want? Or are these questions that I ask to help buyers also get the information that they need? And so by crafting questions that are open-ended and sequential, and open-ended questions are very simple to come up with. They start with who, what, when, where, why, and how. So that what happens is that when you ask these kinds of open-ended questions and you drill down even further into a particular topic with someone, they're going to share more information about what they think. And they're going to talk more about how they think this should work, or what they've tried before and what's worked and what hasn't, and why do they think that is. When we ask these kinds of questions, there's a lot of things that are happening in our brains. For us, when we're asking those questions, it enables us to better understand where someone is at, where they're trying to get to. We understand where they're coming from. But the thing that was really interesting, and this came out of a study out of Stanford, is that when people answer these types of open-ended questions, first thing that it does is it gets them to start thinking differently about the issue or the challenge or the solution that they might have. One of the things that's also really interesting about this was another study that was done by Harvard. They wanted to understand, why is it so difficult for people to stop talking about themselves, which is actually our goal in sales as agency owners, is we want to get our potential prospects and buyers to talk about themselves more than we talk about ourselves. But what happens is that when we're sharing information, like right now, my brain is completely lit up like a Christmas tree because you're asking me all of these questions about what I think and I'm answering them. And so what's happening is it's releasing dopamine in my brain. And it comes from the part of our brains where we also form bonds and relationships of trust with people. So when you ask these kinds of open questions that gets people to self-disclose and share more of what they think, not only are you helping to understand them more, helping them to change their minds about something, but you're also building trust with them because of the dopamine that's flooding their brains in those moments.
Yeah.
And so what that does is it builds trust that they're more likely to share more information with you. And then your job as the agency owner is to be able to take those answers, dig into them to the point where you completely understand where they're trying to get to, what kind of results they want to see, when they need to see them by, and why it matters. And then be able to then reverse engineer how we're going to help you get there by also understanding what you've already tried and what's worked and what hasn't worked and what kind of resources do you have. You're creating a custom solution for them. Even though it's probably already the solution that you have, they feel that it's customized to them because of the way that you've asked these kinds of questions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fascinating. I mean, it is in some ways it's sales 101, right? But it's you're just tapping into the psychology of just getting somebody to talk is gives them more comfort with you, right? Like
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
Well,
So
the challenge is though that like just as our buyers want to do all of the talking, it's also what I find happening, even though it's sales 101 and it is so simple, it's also really hard for us to just sometimes shut up about our product and how we do things. And I can't tell you how many agency owners I've worked with that their pitch starts off with, well, we're this and we got here because of this. And it's all about them. It's
yeah,
one of the things. I have these t-shirts that I made that say not about me upside down to remind people when you look
to
down,
look down.
it's not about you. They
That
don't
is
care yet.
amazing. I have a similar, whenever I have a new salesperson come on, I sit them down and I talk to them about the curse of knowledge
Yeah.
and what happens. See, a rep will start off really good because they just don't know a lot, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
they don't talk, right? They listen, right? And they ask questions. And when they don't know something, like they say, I don't know, right? Which creates trust. And then they gain a little knowledge and they drop because they just want to tell everything that they know, right? And the good ones obviously figure it out and do the best of both. But
Yeah.
it is amazing how just shutting up and listening makes a huge difference.
So one of the things that I teach my salespeople and managers to do is that in order to help yourself to shut up when you need to, is to seek your dopamine hits from other places rather than doing all of the talking about yourself. So listen to music, get some exercise, hang out with some people, do things that are healthy that are going to release that dopamine in your brain so that you don't seek the dopamine in those conversations. You don't make it all about you because that's how you're getting your highs.
Very interesting. That's a good one. You also talk about, and this makes a lot of sense, right? Shifting mindset from vendor to partner.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if you were to sort of, if we have a bunch of agency owners watching this, what's one or two tips that they can implement right away that to sort of shift that mindset for them and their partners to a more partner mindset as opposed to a vendor relationship?
I think that the first thing that you need to understand is it, and this is something that I drill into all of my agency owner is understanding the what kind of results do they need to see and by when and why does that matter?
Hmm.
Because from that standpoint, you can then understand how to best collaborate with them or even understand if you can even help them to begin with. And so it's really making sure that your conversations are focused on getting to that piece of information, because then from there, for agency owners especially, once you understand what kind of results that they need to see and when they need to see them by, that's then how you can create the solutions and the programming that's going to get them there in a
Hmm.
realistic way. So if they need to see, if they need to see 100 leads from SEO in 3 months, well, that's probably not going to be a realistic goal for them. And so you have to be able to offer your insights to challenge them on that so that they understand what a realistic goal of that might be. But if you take on that client who's expecting those kinds of results in 3 months, they're going to be sadly disappointed in you and you're going to lose that client. And it still costs more to get a new client than it does to keep a happy one.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
really comes down to how do you get a client that you set the right expectations with that you can keep happy, that then are going to then refer you and introduce you to other people, because that's still the fastest way to grow your business.
And do you have specifically again for agency owners, do you have sort of rules of thumb about how often they should be checking in or touch points with their clients to, because as you said, like it's not enough to just do great work, right? Like they've got to feel good about the relationship and they've got to feel like you're a partner. So how do you, are there sort of like little tips that you give to say like, hey, this is sort of a basic, sort of formula?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so first of all, depending on the scope of the project or the retainer that you're working with them on, they should have their own dedicated account manager that meets with them weekly, that gives them updates, that they're able to go back and forth with that. But as the agency owner, if you're the one who sold them, I would want you to check in with them at least once a month to find out, is the promise that you made getting delivered? And then also, what improvements can you make? It's not enough to just send out an NPS score survey or those types of things. Like actually have a touch point with them at least once a month, especially if you have like a 12-month program of, what's working executive to executive, where do some of these tweaks need to be made? How is, progress being made, which is then also the opportunity for you to ask for referrals and introductions to other people like them if you're enjoying the work with them.
Yeah. It's interesting. That it just reminds you how often people are a little scared to check in because it's almost like, oh, I don't know if I want to hear it, but man, it's just the opposite. If you're scared to talk to your clients, you're
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reality is that something's going to go wrong.
yeah.
Something somewhere along the line is going to go wrong or not as they expected. And the real proof of the relationship isn't when things are going perfectly. It's when they go wrong and how you react to that. That's what actually builds their trust in you. I don't know that anyone expects things to go perfectly, but they're looking for how you're going to react when it doesn't. And that's going to be the true test of whether or not they become a lifetime client.
Yeah. Yeah. So, uh, tell us a little about the book. I got a quick summary of it, but what sort of prompted you to pick up and write a book? I mean, that's kind of a big commitment.
It is definitely a big commitment. Full disclosure, I was one of those naughty, dorky kids that I did the library reading contest every summer.
Ooh,
I
I did
wanted
too.
all of the
Yeah.
gold stars, right? Yeah, like avid reader. Actually, when I was 12 years old, I wanted to be in the Guinness Book of World Records as the youngest published author of a book. And as I sat down on
Wow.
my grandfather's typewriter to start writing out this book, I don't even remember what it was about. And then the next Guinness Book of World Records came out, and it was an 11-year-old who was now the youngest. I'm like, well, I'm 12. I'm already out. And so it's something that I have a love of knowledge, a love of books. I've always wanted to write a book, but this book was born because of the journey that I went through in starting my own marketing agency and how badly I made so many mistakes. And my husband asked me the same question. He's like, why are you giving away all of your secrets? I said, because if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, at least someone else will have learned to avoid these potholes and how to navigate around them. And then hopefully their life and their world will be a better place.
Yeah.
It was also one of those things that I won't say that it kept me up at night, but it was the first thing I thought of before I went to sleep. And the first thing I thought of when I woke up the next day, that it was just, if I didn't birth this book, it was going to eat me alive. But then it was also clients were asking me for it because of the concepts that I was teaching. And one of the things that I'll say is that in writing the book, the mission was to help other people change their mindsets and perspectives, but it also changed me in a way as well, as, going through the process of really nailing down, because I make sure that everything is based on science that I've actually tested out. It's not just a theory. We've actually used it in the field and tried it out. But I also wanted it to be something that was going to be a guidebook for people who were starting their own businesses, because I actually started writing it at the last kind of recession that we had because of COVID. And I saw all of the stats that were coming out about how many people were leaving corporate to go start their own businesses, which is the exact place that I was in 2007. And after a year trying to figure out, do I go get the 4-letter word called a job, or do I figure out how I'm going to make this work?
Yeah, that's great. All right, before I have my rapid fire questions, but before we do
Okay.
that, anything else, again, if I'm an agency owner listening to this, anything else you want to impart on them before we go to the rapid fire questions?
I would say that think about your sales origin story. Where does your perception of sales come from? And examining that and applying some logic and some rationale to it, because that is oftentimes the very experiences that we've had. And most of us have not had good sales experiences if we've all had to buy a used car somewhere along the line. But that's a lot of times your perception of sales becomes your behaviors in sales, becomes the results that you get. And the good news is that with some self-awareness and some personal goals, you can change the way that you think, you can change your behaviors, and you can change your results. I mean, you can see I have all of these books behind me that I've studied every sales process out there that there is. There is no magical formula. except for examining your thoughts, how they become your behaviors, and how they become your results. And we absolutely can change those. And it's something you can do in small ways in your everyday life. It doesn't have to be like this, you need to go on a 3-month sabbatical kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's
Not
right.
that that's a bad idea either.
No, no, exactly. I wish I had the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, rapid fire questions. What's your go-to podcast right now?
I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, honestly. I end up starting to yell at the podcast announcer or the guest in some way. But I will say that one of my favorite podcasts is Women in Sales, that's run by Lori Richardson. We're in Women in History Month as well, but I really love her podcast because it helps me to feel better about some of the challenges and struggles that I hear and see, like, okay, it's not just me and I'm not the only one. But then also learning from those that, have gone from here to there. And they're just such great personal and inspiring stories that she shares. So that's one of the ones that I will listen to on a regular basis. That and the Huberman Lab podcast, because I'm a brain
I've
science
heard
nerd.
I've heard a lot about it. I haven't listened to that. That's definitely on my list as well.
Yeah. He got
Um,
me taking cold showers and it does actually help. So
does it
I'll
really?
that.
I don't know. I don't know about that. All right. One thing that people who don't know you that well would be surprised to learn about you.
Okay, so the people who know me well know this. So the people who don't know me well don't know that once upon a time I was a nun in an opera on stage singing, and I have the photo to prove it.
Wow, that definitely fits the bill. And most memorable point in your professional career to so far.
Okay.
I mean,
I
you
would
can say the
have to.
book. I mean, it's
Well,
probably
yes, it's
right.
so it was the definitely was the publishing of the book, but it was I launched the book at Inbound, which is a big conference
Yep.
in the Boston area that's run by HubSpot. I launched it there, and I remember waking up on Saturday morning after the conference and going on Amazon and seeing that my book was number one. And I
Wow.
was like, I was screenshotting the crap out of that. I was sending it to my mom. I was like, okay, I've reached the goal of not only
Wow.
publishing the book, but it is actually a number one bestseller for selling. So I was like, that is something I won't forget anytime soon.
That is awesome. Well, everybody, the book can be found on Amazon.
Buyer first, grow your business with collaborative selling. And it's not just for small business owners. I've also had sales managers buy it for their entire teams, because it really is, what is it buyers want today? What are the behaviors that they expect? Here they are. And here's how you're going to change your own mindsets about what sales is and isn't in order to adopt those behaviors that buyers want.
Awesome. All right, Carole Mahoney, I really appreciate it. How can people find you?
So you can find me on, I have a website called carolemahoney.com, which is where I do a lot of my speaking from. You can also find me on unboundgrowth.com, or of course on LinkedIn. If you can't find me on LinkedIn, then I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, really nice to talk to you, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Tim. Thanks for having me.